About how spending too much time on social media could have a negative impact on people. And now Facebook is acknowledging it.
If you're a parent out there and you're letting your children watch these two, I'm sorry, but you're a bad parent.
Did you know the average person spends 4 years of his life looking down at his cell phone?
So for an art Instagram, you should be posting artwork.
If you'd like to know how to get more Facebook followers.
Ayun po, gusto ko lang humingi ng apology.
Sometimes people tweet 4 times a day.
Followers and likes. Ignoring those who actually love us.
The easier it is for them to find the content that you're pushing out.
For my fans who are defending my actions.
Well, over in the Philippines, the country has reported it's the first coronavirus death outside of China on
the Wuhan coronavirus.
Infected with COVID-19.
Millions quarantined, with whole cities in lockdown.
Now, the Philippines is extending its lockdown in some areas.
It is quite the phenomena because we are alone and, stuck in our houses and we can't see our friends and all that. And yet I feel like we are more connected to each other than we have ever been. And in the most special ways.
The answer is, it's how you use social media that matters when it comes to your well-being.
Welcome to the Naked PolitiXXX Podcast, and this is the Political Meat segment. Technology creates social isolation. This is a chicken and egg question, precisely because some people are saying that we are already lonely, and then when technology happened, somehow it helped us cope with that pandemic of loneliness. But at the same time, some people are arguing that technology separated us from each other. So, which is which? Which is the myth? Is technology creates social isolation, or technology helps divide social isolation?
Like what you said, Sir Jano, it's a chicken and egg question. So, there are studies, mas lonely yung mga tao na mas babad sa social media compared sa mga tao who spend less time on social media. Pero that study cite another angle. Possible na yung mga nasama dun sa study na yon ay dati nang malungkot bago sila pumunta sa social media. Possible din, kaya sila naging malungkot dahil nag-social media sila. Pero itong nakaraang pandemic, karoon naman ng positive effecto. No? Because people were forced to self-isolate. No? We need to do social and physical distancing, and we were practically locked out from our social circles, friends, families, colleagues, and ang nagbind lang sa atin ay technology. So the only connection that we have from the outside world are Zoom, no? That's why it became a social media app. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. Merong angulo ngayon na imbes na maging isolated ka, ay it connected people around you. Pero prior to pandemic, meron namang argument na dahil sa nakikita mo yung mga friends mo online, there's no urge for you to meet them personally. Kaya nagkaroon ng sense of false connections yung mga tao na we only talk virtually, we only talk on the phone. We never really had what they call real connections. I can't tell if it's a myth or not a myth at this point.
I think it's wrong to generalize the conversation on technology and social isolation on those two examples. For us to have an open conversation on technology and social isolation, we need to look at the context, the people itself. We need to focus on the real variables on why people think or perceive that social media or technology is a cause of social isolation. Not really about technology or the idea of social isolation, but it all boils down in the perception and motivation of people of why and how they use social media and technology in general. When you look at people my age, we would rather have meetings, gatherings physically na magsasama-sama kami. But at the same time, during the pandemic, we realized that it's not possible and that social media can be an avenue in which we can actually connect with each other. And because the context, because of that situation of the pandemic, we saw na social media is not really that toxic. Technology is not really that toxic. When you have the right mindset and motivation of how you use it, people often box themselves thinking na kapag nag-social media ako or ginamit ko yung technology, ibig sabihin nito, magiging less na yung time ko makipag-interact sa kanila physically. But I think that both should be supplementary. So I think that the whole thing, the choice between is a bit of a false dilemma for me.
Elli, do you agree with that? That it's not a chicken or egg question? Depende sa bata?
It's not about technology itself, but how people use technology, kung mag-create siya ng isolation or not. Because technology in the first place was invented to connect people, make communication an easier thing. Hindi nga siya chicken and egg question. It's neither. It's contextual. It highly depends on the context and how people would use technology. If I'm going to play a game online, it's technology, right? It would create isolation for me because I'm not connecting with other people. I'm just playing on my own. But if I were to play an online game wherein I could meet other people, socialize with other people, I am connected. It's not social isolation.
Do you agree na somehow yung people who tend to migrate to social media, they're lonely? Kung hindi naman, binanggit kanina ni Jeff na may mga tao na mas lumungkot when they migrated to social media. Well, why do you think that is the case?
Mas gusto kong sagutin, sir, yung tendency ng tao na lumungkot when they migrated to social media. It's really because of the fact that you are sharing yourself to your networks in social media. Then after that, you will compare your situations. Since you are exposed to your networks, you will tend to compare your life situation sa social media because the tendency of people is to share only the positive thing. That can create an illusion that yung mga nangyayari sa tao na to sobrang gaganda. At i-compare mo yung sa sarili mo, and because of that comparison, you will tend to be insecure. Then once you become insecure, then it will probably lead you to stress, anxiety, and perhaps depression. The problem here is that because we are exposing ourselves too much in social media, parang we are inviting people to peek in our lives. Since we allow people to peek in our lives, therefore, we also invite them to affect our emotions, our perspective. So that is one of the side effects of social media, of networking, of connecting with people. The more na binibigyan mo ng license yung tao na tumingin sa timeline mo or dun sa curated feed mo, therefore nagkakaroon din sila ng power to affect how you feel.
Thank you, Emil. Izrie, do you agree with that? Yung sa sinabi ni Emil, that somehow when we see other people, kung ano nangyayari sa kanila, we tend to compare kung ano nangyayari sa atin. Pero gusto din natin yun, di ba? We want to show yung flex mentality, di ba? What do you say about it?
I think yung point po na na-raise ni Sir Emil is really happening, and it's reality in social media and how we use technology today. But at the same time, that context of social media or that representation of what technology is a bit, I guess, mainstream or generalized. In a sense that we don't look at people who are mostly using technology not for people to look into their lives but to share connection or to have connection with other people. I think that, again, katulad po ng sinabi ko kanina, it all boils down into the motivation of people of why they use and how they use social media and technology. Even though merong mga tao na ginagamit yung social media to let's say, flaunt their lives, and that makes other people insecure. But we need to also look at the fact that social media and technology is not only that. Kasi I think po that we're putting technology too much in a bad light, because if we look at why technology was built in the first place, it was built because people needed an outlet to connect. People needed that resource to be more efficient in their lives. For me, it's not about the question of if technology causes social isolation at this point. I think if anything, any tool like technology can be used in a bad way. So if technology is abused, my whole point with what I'm saying is that it's not about the thing that we use, it's about the person that uses it and how they use it. And it all boils down to they can use it in a good or bad way, if it brings social isolation in their lives or not.
Okay, thank you, Izrie. Jeff, what's the trend now? Kasi for a while, hindi ba, the trend is Facebook. It's 10 years old. But at some point, young people especially, migrated from Facebook to Instagram or Snapchat for a while, and then TikTok, di ba? So parang young people are so picky. But at the same time, nakita natin that old people, supposedly socially isolated, they migrated to Facebook to connect with whoever, their friends and all. So, ano bang trend? And what's going to be the trend in the future with regards to social media as a way to connect or to disconnect? Jack.
Yeah, tama po yung sinabi nyo, no? There's a trend especially in the United States, wherein younger people tends to get out of Facebook, and most of them migrated to Snapchat and now TikTok. So nakita natin anong pinag-iba ng Facebook kay TikTok at kay Snapchat. And yung Snapchat, it tends to be more on the individualistic side of the personality ng mga users nila. So may sinasabi na younger people tends to be more, they're looking more on the self-validation. Kaya yung mga likes, followers are so important to them. It's another way of parang coming out. It matters to them the number of likes that they get. Kaya yung Instagram and followers, makikita mo rin dito yung nila, tend nila to join communities, no? So nag-rise din yung mga K-pop fans, anime fans, no? Nagkaroon ng natural, organic way of grouping based on your interests, based on your ideas, yung mga younger generations. Kaya ang nakikita nila, no, in the near future, itong community building, organic community building will be more pronounced. No? So kaya nagkaroon ng mas maraming platform yung video sharing. And now there's an emerging trend, yung streaming. So people are starting to stream games, no? And young people, they get satisfaction just watching other people doing games because they can't play it themselves, but they get satisfaction watching other people doing it. So that's another trend na nakikita natin. And whether it leads to social isolation or not, that I don't know. But I kind of agree with what Izrie and what Eleanor said earlier. No, it might depend really on the person. No, kasi nga it's just a tool. No, kung may masamang epekto yan or may magandang epekto yan, it will depend on how you will use that tool. But yeah, the trend will be more, not less social media, but I think more social media. But then younger people tends to be picky. They tends to focus nila is hindi ganun kabili, no? Actually, the TikTok is not new. Merong Vines before, pero it died. And then nagulat tayo, meron ulit TikTok who it does the same thing, no? Kay Vines. Pero who knows anong susunod? And the rise of social media influencers, no, yung mga YouTube influencers, no, nagkaroon ng ganun din. So people are starting to share more of themselves. And on the front of the self-isolation, meron pa isang school of thoughts about it na the more you talk about yourselves in social media, it's kind of therapeutic. Para ka nakikipag-usap daw, even just posting on your wall, para ka nakikipag-usap to someone else. Na mas gumagaan yung pakiramdam mo, mas nababawasan ka ng stress. So that's another school of thought na sa mga kabataan ngayon.
Thank you. Ellie, so sinabi kanina ni Jeff, no, yung what's trending and what would be the future, what's gonna be the trend in the future on social media and social connection. But as a young person, what makes you decide to migrate from one social media platform to another? Is it dahil yung mga kaibigan mo, is it bandwagon, are doing this? I don't know if you have TikTok or you like to express yourself. Is this a platform that will give you your artistic creativity? Could you let us know?
It highly depends on the person talaga why they don't migrate a certain social media platform to another. For a lot of young people, they don't use Facebook because it's not their audience or it's not their environment. It's not the environment they're comfortable with. Maybe they find that comfortable environment in Twitter or in Instagram or in TikTok. For me personally, I only really use Facebook and Twitter because yun yung nakasanayan ko and doon ako maraming kaibigan na nakakausap. Pero siguro nga po, ayun no, it's a lot of bandwagon. It's just where your friends are, you also go there. Parang ganon yung mentality. And yung mga bagong apps kasi ngayon, mga bagong platforms, 15 seconds to 1 minute, ganun lang kahaba yung mga videos and it's done. You're finished watching the video. Ayun nga, yung Vines, no? 6-second videos lang and people love it. But I guess yung hindi talaga mamamatay na platforms for now or for a long time is Facebook and YouTube because sobrang dami nang gumagamit and it's impossible na mamamatay lang siya bigla-bigla. So, ayun, I agree po with Sir Jeff na I guess the trend wouldn't be lesser social media but more social media platforms and mamamatay lang yung mga current ones and may bago lang na susulpot.
Thank you, Ellie. We can't seem to get a consensus, di ba? Kung ano ba talaga. Jeff was telling several schools of thought on this chicken and egg question, and then Izrie and Eleanor, they seem to sync with the idea na it's something personal. It's an individual decision whether to make it to socially isolate or not. What's the verdict? Does technology create social isolation?
Two things. And these two things, I would like to, I call this from the statements of our junior podcasters, Izrie and Elli. By the way, welcome to the Naked PolitiXXX Podcast because these are my former students. Two things from them, from their statement. Number one is that I agree with Izrie when he said that there is a myth that technology is something bad. We have this kind of prejudice against technology. Diba? And I think that is a myth. Then the second thing is that I also agree with Izrie and Elli when they said that it will really depend on the individual person on how he or she will use technology. So my answer to that, sir, is that does technology lead to social isolation? The answer is no, it doesn't. Or we cannot generalize it. It depends on the person on how he will use technology. Because as I see it, a technology can lead to social isolation when a person substitutes technology to physical contacts, to physical intimacy. Diba? So kapag sinasubstitute natin yung physical connection sa virtual connection, I think that will lead to social isolation. But if a user will use technology to supplement their physical connection, that will actually enrich further our social interaction. So I agree with Izrie and it depends on how a person will use technology. He can, if he uses it as a substitute, then it will lead to social isolation. But if we will use it as a supplement, then it will further enrich social isolation. And to end, I think what we see in this discussion, the important thing that we need to do moving forward is that it appears that there is a need for an strengthened technology education on educating people, our students, the youth, on how to use technology in order to combat this myth, these two misconceptions. All boils down to a more efficient and effective technology education that must be included, integrated in the curriculum, in basic education curriculum, because we have no choice but to accept technology and to embrace it, especially under the new normal with this pandemic. At the end of the day, I guess the message of our podcast today is that there is a need more strengthened technology education in the Philippines under this new normal.
Thank you, Emil. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if it's a trend, pero hindi ba binanggit ni Emil yung if you lose physical intimacy, that leads to social isolation. But what if technology creates a social media where holograms, for example, becomes a replacement to just chatting or zooming or virtual reality, di ba? Na parang kung ano nangyayari sa akin, nakikita talaga ng lahat, like we're in a place or something. Anyway, maybe that's for another podcast. Thank you, everyone. Please continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like this video and ring the bell. Also, check our social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit. Thank you very much. This is the Naked PolitiXXX Podcast.